Hello, it's been a little while since I've done a tutorial, so I'm glad to be back. And this tutorial is the Antonella bag by Shamballa Bags. It's that pattern, beautiful. And here are two bags I've made so far. I did the testing for it, which I was very honoured to do. This is the full size, as it comes. Very big, lovely and big. Great for overnight bag, or when you're going shopping, all sorts. So that was the main size. And then I also did a reduced size. I reduced it by 80%, or sorry, to 80%. Reduced it by 20%. Pretty much everything you have to think about reducing. The straps I kept the same size because I wanted them the same width. But otherwise, everything else was reduced in size. And it was quite easy to do. So if you want to resize it, you can do. You just have to think about measurements. Sometimes they may be slightly different, like the length of where you put your straps, etc. But if you're used to resizing, then you'll have no trouble doing it. If you're not used to resizing, maybe don't. Just a suggestion. Okay, so we have an array of things that we need to make this bag. I'm always being asked, what's that you use? What's that you use? Like with tools. So I thought I'm going to show everything I'm using so that you know. And I think that's the fairest option to do. So for this bag, I'm going to be using my clips. And I may, on the lining, be using pins. In fact, I will be using pins for the lining. And then we've got, when you're doing things like top stitching, I don't like to do the locking stitches by going backwards and forwards because it can look a bit messy. So I pull out a long thread on the bobbin thread and the top thread and stitch, and then what I do afterwards, I go back and I have leather needles and I just thread them with the top thread and push it through to the other side, tie them off, and then I put the needle through just sort of up an inch into whatever I'm stitching and try to come out at a seam and then just snip that stitch right down to the edge, and it just makes for a much neater finish. So I've got my leather needles, got my rivet punch, my twist punch with the different rivet dies. You can use the hand one if you want to, but this is what I prefer. And with it, I've got a poly mat to save my cutting board from getting lots of holes. So that's them. I have my thread snippers, and it also doubles as a seam ripper. It's 2 in 1. Love it. So I've got that. I've got my clipper for going round curves, just if you need to snip the seams. My dissolvable ink, heat dissolvable ink pen. My rotary cutter, which is open and shouldn't be. I've got my Gutterman HT2 glue. It's the glue I always use. I love it. It's brilliant. So if you're looking for a glue, my screwdriver, and that's for the end straps, etc. I've got my double-sided tape, invaluable. I live and die with this. I swear by it. My thread for matching my fabrics, plus my bobbin, which I'm going to wind the thread onto to have matching. Now I've got my roller here. When I stitch with vinyl or leather, when you've turned the seam, it's nice to roll the seams flat. It really does make a big difference. So I love this roller. My mini ruler. I did use my big ruler as well for cutting. Some good dressmaking scissors. These ones, I'm not sure where they're from. I think they were from Tulip Pink, or I'm not completely sure actually. I got them several years ago now, but they're beautiful. My walking foot, you need a walking foot if you're using vinyl, leather, cork. I mean, I use a walking foot even on just on cotton. I love my walking foot. It's my baby. Love it. And my zips, you need a 23-inch number 5 zip and an 8-inch number 3 zip for inside. So that's all those pieces. And then hardware wise, there's quite a few goodies. We have clasps for the sides. Now, if you don't wish to add clasps to the side, I'll show you what they look like. There. And it's to pull the bag down like so. Now, not everyone likes the look. So if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. It's still a beautiful bag as it is. So I've got some beautiful rings. I didn't want to use the standard rings that you get, but these are really quite posh. So that's the clasp and the rings. And I'm making a tassel. I've got a tassel holder here. So I'm going to be making a tassel. I've got 4 end straps, or strap ends, for the straps, obviously. I've got 2 zip pulls. One's a number 5 and one's a number 3, but they do match. I got these, I think, from eBay UK, I think. Anyway, magnetic snap, 18mm. Lots of rivets, a handmade label, and a zip end for the exterior zip. So that's all the hardware. I hope you're keeping up. I don't want to take too long because it can get a bit boring. Now the pattern, it's quite big. It prints off on 4 sheets. And then you literally put them together using the lovely little shapes that match up. Very handy. So I did that, and then I also printed them again, and then I put them face down, because obviously you've got the ends. If I did it face up, it wouldn't match, or it would be upside down. And then I just put medical tape to hold it together for cutting out. And that is something I do with all my patterns, and plus I've laminated this. Sorry, I have said in my other tutorials, so if you don't mind going back and looking at some of the other tutorials where I have talked about this, but I do laminate my patterns. So I've prepared all the pattern pieces the same way, and now for the fabrics. I've had this fabric for years, I mean about 10 years, and I bought a bucket load, and every now and then I find a nice use for it, and this is one of them. It's called a girl thing. It's a very girly fabric. This is the pocket for the internal zipper pocket, which is 8.5 and 9 and, well, I've done 10 inches. The slip pocket. Now, the slip pocket is not part of the pattern. I do this, and normally, if I'm not using directional fabric, I do 13 by 13 inches. A nice square that then I would fold in half. I will show you how to make the zipper pocket later. I'm doing a directional fabric, so I've cut 2 6.5 deep, 13 across, and then I will make sure they're facing the same direction when I stitch them together. That way, when you open the pocket, you haven't got it all upside down. Then I've got the exterior pocket piece, which is 13 by 8. That is part of the pattern, obviously. And then the lining pieces. And this is the lovely big pieces. I have interfaced everything. I either use Shapeflex SF101 or I use a cotton woven from a lady I buy from in the UK. She's called Crackers Fabrics on Facebook, Shirley Evans, and she sells cotton woven and all sorts of interfacings, and they're fantastic. I use 76F that she does, F for Freddie, in place of Decoville Light. So it's really good stuff. So it's worth having a look if you're in the UK. Now, the other things are the exterior fabrics. And I've done my flap panel, but I didn't want to do it in just vinyl like I've done with the other ones. I wanted to do vinyl and the fabric that I'm using for the pocket. So I did my woven pattern piece to cut them, to cut both. Even though this is for vinyl and this is for woven, I use this to cut as well, because what I'm going to do is sew them down like this and turn them through like so, so the edges will be sealed. And I've also got some buckram, it's like a very heavy Decoville light, that I will use once I've turned the pocket, because it's very hard to turn afterwards because it's so stiff. I will use that once I've turned the pocket. I have also interfaced my woven, and I've put some fusible fleece on the back that I pressed. So it's gone sort of quite thin, but it just gives it a bit of structure because the magnetic snap's going to be going on here. I've got my contrast upper band, and I'm using directional print. It's a snakeskin print, so I'm very careful making sure that I do them the right way up. We've got the straps, which is 23.5 by 3 inches. I've done 24 by 3. You can do whatever length you want, and you can also do, I believe you can do that one shoulder strap. I'm not sure. No, there isn't. I beg your pardon. Take a notice. So these are the straps. I did do 26 inches on the other one. I've done 24 there. The connector strip, this is one that you will be cutting into 4 to do the ring and clasps with. So if you're not using the ring and clasps, forget this piece. You cut 2 central pieces. Now I have fussy cut because of the pattern. I didn't want it to be odd, you know, and like have the wider part here and narrow part there. So I did have a bit of wastage by doing the fussy cutting, but it does look better to do that. I'll show you this bag again. I did exactly the same fabric but in a different colour, but you'll see what I mean about the fussy cutting, and and with the flat panel it all follows through. So it's worth doing, even though you do use a little extra fabric. So they're my centre pieces, and then I've got my side pieces. You cut 2 one way, turn it over and cut 2 the other way. And again I have pattern match so that the pattern follows on neatly. I've got my piece for my tassel. Now I'm using a large tassel cap, so I've done quite a big piece. It's 6.5 inches across and 6.5 inches down. So yeah, 6.5 inch square. You can do what length you like, but it needs to be the right size to fit in the tassel cap. Final thing is the foam. Now I just need to take a drop of water. Very dry. Okay, now the pattern calls for 3 pieces of foam each side. So what you do is you make the centre piece and sew the foam on to the sides and so on. I don't do that, and it did work for me. I used the lining pattern piece to cut 2 foam pieces out, And I add this once I've created the exterior sides and that they look like the lining pieces. Then I add them to the pattern piece. So if you want to do them separately, by all means do. But I'm just showing you this method. Of course, my trusty iron. And I think that's it. I'm pretty sure I've covered everything. I've really tried to be efficient and think ahead. So I apologise if I get it wrong. If there's something I missed and later on I say, oh, I forgot to tell you about this thing. But hopefully I've got it all. So it's time to get on with the making the bag. I just told you in the measurements that we did a 3" by 24" strap, and I completely forgot that my strap ends are 1 inch wide. I couldn't get smaller ones, so if you've got 1 inch strap ends, you do need to do a 4 inch wide strap. I've actually made this one 29 inches long because I want a slightly longer one. So there you go. The first part that we start with is preparing the exterior. We have the centre piece to prepare. And I meant to say earlier on, for the back of the bag, if you didn't want to have the 3 panels that you stitch together and you wanted a shortcut, apologies, I keep yawning. I didn't sleep last night, so I keep yawning. If you wanted a shortcut, use the lining panel piece to cut the back, and then you don't have to do the sections. That's if you don't want to. I like it. I think it's a nice feature of the bag, so I would choose to do it, but I just wanted to let you know. Okay, so we make sure if we've got a directional fabric that we've got the right direction, and then we just turn it to the back, and I'm going to just turn it upside down so I'm closer to the hole. Now I've cut the hole out on my pattern piece like so. Just makes it easier to mark, and then I line it up perfectly. I really want to make sure it's exactly where I need it to be, and I put my pattern weight on. Yes, I use my green machine because it's really good, very heavy. I have these metal washers, the plumber's washers that I bought. They're a good weight, so I tend to use them on smaller things, but you can't beat this green machine. Okay, so just mark it with your dissolvable heat pen. Draw around a rectangle. I don't know why I got the ruler here, because I was ready. And then you need to mark the centre line. So I'll draw a line along the centre, not quite to the end, and then I mark a V. I will show you in a second. And the trouble is it's very heavy to lift. Okay, so that's what I've marked. It's very important to do these little marks at the end. It depends on what you want to do for cutting. I like to use my rotary cutter. I do usually freehand it, but I'm not going to tempt fate, because usually when I say I can do something, I prove myself wrong. So I'm just going to cut along the centre line. We're not cutting it out. We just want to cut along the centre line. And I get my snippers and just go to the tip of the V, and this seems a bit alien, doing this without stitching around it, etc. I must admit, I read and read and read the first time I saw the pattern, and I'm thinking, am I reading this correctly? As it was a test pattern, I also wondered if it had been forgotten, but no, this is correct, and it's brilliant. So we've cut where we need to cut, and then we get our double-sided tape, and you can use glue, but it would be very messy because it's not a very big line. So I really do highly recommend that you use double-sided tape for this, and you just lay it along the outer lines, end to end, and then I just want to snip some small pieces at the ends. So it's like that, and then we peel off the backing, there. Oh, and I've stuck it to each other now. Oh, goodness me. There you go. Okay, and then fold over the edges on the lines. I mean, it's about 1/8 of an inch. It's really quite small. And press it very well down. And I just get my roller and then fold over the other edge. And fold over the end pieces as well. So, roll it. Now turn it over and also roll it from the front. So there you have your hole made. And we just need to draw these other lines now, the dashed lines. So I just start by laying it like so. Okay, so I've marked the ends so that I can just draw a line one side to the other. There. These ends do not want to stick on the tape. That's it. Just press it down a bit more. Make sure it's tight enough, firm enough. And the next stage we've got is to add the pocket. And what we need is the exterior pocket piece, the one that's 13 inches by 8 inches. We get our trusty double-sided tape again and just put the tape on the inside of each line. Okay, and I'm using directional fabric, so I need to remember to put the right side on. Okay, so I'm just working this out. Okay, that way. And just lay it along the line centrally, and then we're going to take it to the machine and we just stitch along the bottom line here, not around the sides or the top. That's the only part we're going to stitch. And because my fabric is directional, we're going to be able to see in that gap when the flap's up. So my directional fabric is going downwards, and you'd need to do the same thing if you're using directional fabric. Right, so I've come to the machine, I've pulled my threads through by about 6 inches, and then making sure the pocket's laying flat, line up, and then just stitch really close to the edge, as close as you dare. And remember not to back stitch. Don't just use your thread cutter. Pull out of the machine like so, and then I just, so as you can see, I've sewn right along the bottom, very close to the edge. Okay, so let's just put this iron out of the way. Right, so now we want to bring the pocket down and just finger press along the edge, like so. Then remove this side of the double-sided tape, and then fold the pocket up to the top. and place it down along the line. And then we take this to the machine and we're going to stitch around the sides and the top. So again, we've got our threads sticking out, going out by about 6 inches, and we start stitching. Didn't feel it was sitting nicely then. And again, pull the threads out. So here we have the stitch box. I don't know if you can actually see it or not. Hopefully you can. And now I'm going to get my leather needle. These are super sharp, quite lethal in fact. And I'm going to get the thread that's on the top here and just slightly frayed. It. I can't see it all. It's wet the thread. Got it. And now we just want to go down through. I forgot actually, we've got the other top one as well. So we've threaded that one, and we also need to thread this one. So like so. So you've caught both ends up. You've got the end that you did along there, and then the sort of start of the thread from there, and then go down through the layers and out of the back. And then you've also got a thread under here from the first row, so we just want to send that through to join the others. It's very important. I had it then and then I lost it. Got it. And we just need to send it through like so. So we've now got 4 threads here, so we get 2 in each hand and tie them off. And I like to tie them 3 times. That's it, they're nice and secure now. So you can just snip the ends. And we do the same with the other side. Goodness, this pink is so light, it's actually hard to see. I've just got a frayed end. I'm going to try and do both together actually. So cut them at the same length. And then again down and through. And then we need to get the last one and pop it through to join the others. Like so. And tie off. So this now will result in a nice looking front with no locking stitches that might have made a mess. I'll just put my leather needle away, I don't want that left lying around to stab myself with. So there we have that part done. Now we just need to stitch down each side. So I shall take it to the machine and do that. Okay, so we don't need to worry about the thread poking through or anything. And just going to stitch . So that's the pocket made. Now it's time to add the magnetic snap. So we've made the front centre panel and we've sewn the pocket up and so on, as I've shown you. And now we need to mark the placement for the snap. So we get our pattern piece. I've put a hole in the centre of the pattern piece placement. And just make sure you line this up really well, because it's important that everything's lined up correctly for the flap magnetic snap to meet up. So I've marked a dot in the centre and I just get my washer. I'm sure most of you know what to do with a magnetic snap, but there may be a few of you watching that have never used one. So you centre the whole of the washer over the red dot, or the dot that you've made from the placement, and then just draw the lines either side, because you're not making a hole where the circle is, you're making a hole where the lines are. And I've just dropped my very sharp knife and nearly dropped it on my foot. Whew. Okay, making sure you've got the pocket out of the way because you don't want to go through that. Just carefully with fingers out of the way. I like to use my craft knife. You can use a seam ripper. That works just as well. Or some good sharp scissors. So, cut through. And we need the female part of the snap. And I did get them, but now I've lost them. Oh, that's because because they're magnetic. All the rivets have stuck to them, so it hid them. Oh dear. Okay, we want the female part, which is the part with the dip. The male is the one with the protruding part. I mean, if you think about female and male anatomy, that's how it's easy to remember. That the male one has something sticking out and the lady has something not. So there you go. So that's how I remember. And I'm sorry if it offended anyone, but I say it as is. Okay, so I've inserted that. Turn over, put the magnetic snap washer on, and I like to fold them out. On the washer, and then I just get a spare bit of foam that I keep, offcuts of foam, or you can use Peltex. In fact, thinking about it, I'm going to use Peltex. I don't want it sticking out too far, so just cut a piece of the size, and it doesn't really glue with the iron, so I like to actually glue it on. It just, doing this, it stops you feeling the magnetic snap through the pocket, and it stops the metal rubbing away and causing a hole in you know, future use. And I just press that down. And it's important to make sure everything's stuck down. And I'm going to do a little cheat because I want to sew with this piece. There's a possibility this would come away. So I get my medical tape and just stick this down. It'll hold that in place, stop it from coming off whilst we sew. So now we need to get our side pieces, and we need one of each. So we need a left and a right one, like so. And now we need to place these together and sew at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, we need to make sure that we don't sew over this pocket. So I'm sewing this with the pocket side up so that I can see and move it out of the way as we move up. And we do the same with the other piece. And again, I want to keep an eye on the pocket. And I don't clip it all the way down, but I just, because this is very slippery because it's shiny, I just like to clip it in a few places just to make sure it's lined up correctly. So, and again 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And now what we need to do is to push the seams open and I like to use my roller. It's not going to keep them, perfectly flat. You can, if you wish, use some double-sided tape to keep these seams open because you're going to top stitch either side. But I just make sure that the seam's open at the start. And you're going to top stitch on either side of the seam and have the seam open. I'm just pushing the pocket out of the way and opening the seams up as I go. And then we want to go up the other side. And again, check for the pocket, yes, it's still out of the way. And then do exactly the same with the other side. And using the roller, it may not flatten it fully, but it really helps because it just persuades it to lay flat when you're stitching. So it's, if you've got a roller, it's worth doing. Okay, so and the final side, move the pocket out of the way again. So, I've top stitched both sides of the seams, and apart from the flap, that's the front finished. And I like to place my handmade label. Now some people like to add it onto the flap, but I like to add it to the front of the bag, and I've lost that now, for goodness sake. Oh, it's here. Oh, goodness me. So it's worth spending time to line it up properly. Choose where you want to put it. Now obviously I'm going to have a flap coming here, and I like to lay around here. So I just measure between the seams, and 4 is the centre. Just double check. Yep, that's laying central with the magnetic snap, so I know I've got that in the right place. And I get the washer and I just check. Right, as you can see, the holes are like 1 in from each end, so that's what I want to mark. And again, I get my craft knife and making sure that I avoid the pocket. I've put the hole in. It through. And this time with these ones I fold them in. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And I'm going to add some more Peltex. And I'm just going to hammer them down so they're laying very flat. And you just sort of have to hold it initially. And I'm going to do exactly the same as before. I'm just going to put a bit of medical tape, but I'm going to put it lengthways because it's sort of not sitting flat across rather than down. And this medical tape is brilliant. It will come away without any problem at all, and it doesn't leave a sticky residue. So there we go. That's that part done. And now we repeat for the other pieces, but obviously we're not doing the pocket. I mean, you can do if you want to. If you want to do a pocket on the front and back, by all means do. That's the great thing about the bag making. We can add our little things that we like or remove them. So I'm not going to show you stitching this because you've seen me do it on the other one. I will sew this and then return when I've done it. I've made both panels, front and back, so this is the back piece. And now we need the top upper bands. They have a slight slant, so you have to make sure you've got the right way up. There's just a slight angle there. So it would be the narrowest part at the top. And what we need to do is draw a line along the centre of the band. So I'm just looking measurement wise. So it's actually 1.6 inches. So it's more or less 0.8 along the centre. So so just make sure that you draw it along the centre. The pattern piece does have the line along the centre, so if you're not sure, what you can do is just move it along, marking a dash as you go. And so on. And then you can just draw the line. It's got a life of its own. Like so. And do the same with both pieces. You don't have to do too many dashes because you'll find it easier to follow the line anyway. Oops, went off a little bit there. Got a bit drunk. Okay, and now we need our trusty double-sided tape, and just put the double-sided tape just under the line that you've drawn. And like I said, make sure that you've got the narrowest part here and the widest part this way, and then you're just going to fold it up to meet the line that you've drawn. Like so. Get my roller, and it's really nice to use a roller in this case. I mean, if you don't have one of these rollers, you can get your rolling pin out. As long as you're just rolling and pressing, it gives you a lovely crisp edge rather than a slightly rounded edge that you'd get with vinyl that's been folded. So bring your pattern piece down, and you want to put this band along the top edge. And what I want to do is get some more double-sided tape, And this time I'm going to put it along the bottom edge of the fold. I don't want to go right to the very bottom, because sometimes it can just peek out below your sewing, your stitching, and then you've got some unsightly double-sided tape on show, which can be a nuisance. So I'll just show you there. You can see it's not quite to the bottom. And then we want the top edged, the unfolded edge, going along the top of the panel. And you will find that it wants to peek out at the end, which it's not a problem. Just snip that bit off, that's fine. It happened with my other bags and it wasn't an issue. And then we just want to stitch along the top edge. So bring to the machine and we need to stitch along. So here's the top edge stitched, and we do exactly the same with the other piece, which I'm sure you don't want to watch me do all over again, so I shall return when I've done it. So I've done the other side as well, so that's both panels completed apart from the flap, which we're going to do next. And you get the pattern piece that you've used. I just need to add a hole in the centre of this one because I haven't used this one pattern piece before. And yes, I'm very naughty for doing it on my I didn't go through anyway. Yeah, I need to use my poly board so I can really dig down to create the hole. And we need the underside, so whatever piece you're using for the underside of the flap, that's the piece you need to get. Line it up and mark your dot. Get your washer. And right, and the thing I like to do is when I've gone through woven fabric, I don't want it to start fraying on me. I don't know if you can see there, but it just looks a little bit like it's going to fray. So I just like to put a bit of fray check or fray block on it, so it'll stop it from happening. And we need to get the male part of the magnetic snap, which, as I said earlier, is the part with the centre raised up, and push it through the holes. Like so. Get the washer. Now, I'm not going to put Peltex on this because it will make it slightly bulky, and because I've got this Burtex, not Burtex, sorry, Buckram, I knew that was wrong, because I've got the Buckram, that will work perfectly. So without adding that yet, what we need to do now, obviously if you're doing both sides being vinyl, you'd use this piece and you'd actually just glue them together and stitch round, so you'd have raw edges. But because I'm doing part woven, I've used the bigger one, and we put them together. And then all we need to do is stitch around here, leave the top open for turning. I forgot to say, you're stitching at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I've stitched round, and I just want to snip the corners to reduce the bulk. Like so, and then turn it right side out. And I just need my pointing device just to push the corners out as best you can. Like so. And then get my trusty roller . Okay, and at this point is where I want to add this piece, and hopefully when I cut it down earlier I've cut it to the right size, but we shall see. It needs to be slightly narrower. That's better. and it should be 1/4 of an inch down. It shouldn't be right to the very top, but I do want it to go down between the seams, so it's, I'll show you in a minute rather than try to explain it. I want it to sit under the seam, tuck it under, so that I know it's gone right to the very edges. Let me have a look. Case of trying to manipulate it, and it's very much worth spending the time doing it, but it can be a bit of a fight. People say to me, I wish I could make bags like you. Anyone can, you really can. It's just that a lot of people don't take the time to make sure that everything is perfectly sat. And I'm just going to get my pliers to get in there to grab the seam up and over. So this is what I mean. So you've got the seam sitting over the top so that it's nice. There's no lumps and bumps and you can't feel the seam there. And I'm now going to take this to the machine and top stitch around the edge. What I want to make sure is that it's just curving over, so you can't see the lining from the top. I'd rather see a slight edge of the vinyl. Happy with that, and so I've stitched all the way around, and you can see it from this side as well. And I just want to make sure, because I'm going to be stitching this like that and folding it down, I don't want this buckram to be to the very top, which I was quite surprised it is, because I did try to estimate that it would be below. So probably should have checked that before I sewed it. I mean, it's not sewn in, I could pull it out, but I don't want to do that. So I just use my applique scissors. Okay, let me just test this, because if I imagine stitching and then folding it down now, I still want it to be not so high. It will make a big difference to the look of the bag and how the flap sits. So it's very important that you don't have anything that's going to cause an issue with the folding down. So it's always worth spending time. That's the thing. If you just go about things and think, I never say that'll do. If my husband hears me say, oh, that'll do, he'll say, no, it won't. And you know it won't. Which is so true. Because I used to make bags in the early days and I'd say, oh, that'll do. And then I'd look at it after I'd finished it and I think, well, I can't give that away. I'd be embarrassed. So I just learned that nothing that'll do. That's great. So, imagining that this is how we're going to attach it first, and then we're going to fold it down. Yeah, that's lovely. So if I show you now inside, it's quite far down. I'd say a good 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. It's not perfectly straight, I will admit. But hey ho. So we've got our magnetic snap. If we put that together, you'll see how and where that's going to sit nicely. And I just want to show you with my fussy cutting, by making sure that when I cut the panels, I had everything symmetrical. And I did the same with the flap, so that when you look here, you'll see that the pattern follows down from the flap. And it really is worth taking your time to do that. So I can't actually remember. You could sew across the top as well, actually. If you want to, you could sew across the top. I'm going to just neaten that edge up. And I'm just going to run this to the machine and literally just stitch across the top now that I've cut the buckram. So I've just stitched across the top, and now we need to measure for where we're going to place the flap. And I'm just looking for my big ruler, which I have lost. It's not small, so how I've lost that, I don't know. Anyway, okay, let's go for something else. Where's my little ruler? In fact, I've got a 4-inch ruler here, so it's perfect. So I'm going to use my 4-inch ruler. And you just need to mark 4 inches down from the top. And draw a line. I'm using my disappearing heat ink. To get rid of it, I certainly wouldn't iron it because it would damage the vinyl. I would either just steam away from it. That's what I would do, yeah. Well, I'm trying to think what else would I do, but that's it. I would literally hold the iron and just shoot some steam, and that doesn't damage the vinyl. Or hairdryer, that's what I was trying to think of. Or I'd get my hairdryer. So that's there. And we lay the flap on. So I'm going to again use my double-sided tape so that it secures the flap, because obviously you can't use anything else to attach it. And you're putting it along the top edge, on the top side of the flap, the side that doesn't have the magnetic snap. Make sure you line it up in the centre of the panel, like so. And we're just going to stitch along there at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I've sewn along. I just want to snip the threads so I don't have any unsightly threads poking out. Okay, and now we fold it down on itself like so, and you should find at some point it meets up with the other side of the magnetic snap like so, and that's where you know your natural line will occur. And this is why I wanted to make sure that the buckram was sitting low enough so that I could fold this without an issue. And now we need to stitch across here, but we need to make sure that we're going to hide this. So we need to stitch low enough. So just make sure that you're going to cover the edges. I'll come back and show you what I mean. Okay, so I've brought the threads up to the top, oops, and the bobbin threads underneath, because obviously we don't want to back stitch on this. So making sure that I've got a good amount down past the raw edge underneath. And then pull so that you've got a good amount of thread. And now the reveal. Let's have a look, shall we? Put it back a bit because it's a bit far. And I'm just going to let that pan out. And it's nice to see there's no peeking from the raw edge. So I'm happy with that. As I did before, I'm going to use my leather needle to sew this through to the other side to tie off, so that we've got no nasty double stitching showing. So I'm going to do that next. So there we have the flap attached. No raw edges peeking out. And I shall return next with the straps. Now we're moving on to the strap. I did add in the video, after I showed all the products and mentioned what we were using, I did mention, add in that I originally said I used 3-inch wide strap and 24 inches long, and I forgot that I don't have 3/4 of an inch wide strap ends. They're 1 inch wide, so if I did a narrower strap then they'd look a bit silly. So bear in mind what strap ends you have. If you're not using strap ends and you're doing something else, then it doesn't matter. But what I've done is cut 4-inch wide, and I've treated myself, and I've done 29-inch length straps, just a bit longer than normal. I've already made one to show you. And just to show you how I made it, I measured 2 inches in and drew a line. And to give the strap some body, plus if the strap is too narrow at the ends, it won't look very good. There'll be a massive gap, but this is perfect because I add Peltex in. You can add other products such as Decovil Light, but it's thin, so it's worth adding the Peltex. Just gives it that bit of thickness. If, however, you're using a vinyl that's got felt backing, for example, you wouldn't need to do that. So bear in mind what you're using as to whether you need to bulk out the handle or not. So, because we need to end up with a strap that's 1 inch wide, if I cut the Peltex to 1 inch wide, then the strap wouldn't fold over very neatly. So what I do is I cut it 7/8 of an inch wide. And if you look here, you'll see that it's not quite to the edge. So bearing in mind for folding, you lose the width over the fold. So that's why it has to be 7/8 of an inch and no more. And what we need to do is place it on one side of the red line, not along the middle, which you may think that you need to do because of the way we're folding the strap. So and now I don't want to place it right up against the red line. I need to give room for the fold over. So I'm placing it literally 1/8 of an inch away from the red line. And they really are that exact measurements. And now we just add some more double-sided tape on top of the Peltex. Just thought, I hope I'm getting that all in. And then on the other side of the red line, and by the way, if you're wondering what double-sided tape I use, I often get asked. It's Style Fix. It's from Germany. Farben Mix is the manufacturer. I buy this. I don't buy it from Germany. I buy it from a lovely lady called Anne Margaret Foy, and she is Bag Kits and Glitzy Bits. She's got her Facebook group. This is £8.50, which is a bargain. It's actually 50 metres long, and she does different widths. This is the 4 metre width, which I love. It's the only width I buy. As you can see, this is a new roll. It's huge, lasts quite a long time, but it's beautiful. It's sewable, doesn't gum up the needle, and super sticky. So I highly recommend it. And Anne does ship to America, so plenty of our ladies do buy from her. So join her group and have a look. She sells hardware, which is fantastic prices, even for America. A lot of the ladies find that it's better to buy from her. So she sells hardware and some other bits and pieces, so take a look. Anyway, I remove the double-sided tape. And then I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to sort of go over the Peltex edge a little bit, just to imagine that I'm going to the red line. mean, I can feel the Peltex along the edge anyway, so it wouldn't allow me to go any further over. That's one side done. Okay, and then more double-sided tape. And now we're going to fold it over and just make sure that the edges really match up well, so that they're not overlapping, because it doesn't look very nice when that happens. So you want to be the boss of it and make it meet up. Turn that round. And there we have it. And I just roll this. It doesn't do a massive job on this because of the Peltex, but it does help a little. And then we take it to the machine to stitch. So here we have the straps made, and now we want to add our strap ends. So if you want to add glue, you can. You don't always need to, but what I'm just going to do is slide them on, and I'm going to mark where the hole is. The reason being is if you just push the screws in, it's going to press the fabric down, and then you're going to just need to trim the threads, and then you're going to see the screw inside. It's just going to be squashed up. So I like to use my smallest hole punch, which is 2.5 mils, and where the holes are, I punch a hole. And now slide it on. I've got little tiny thread ends everywhere, and it just sits nicely in there, and I screw it on. Like so. That's in there nice and tight. I mean, you can add glue, but the trouble is, even if you only add a tiny amount, what can happen is it can squirt out of the sides, and then you've got a bit of a mess. Oops. Can't believe I did that. And then you have a bit of a mess. So if you do this and punch the hole, it helps keep the strap in there. So that's the strap added on, and if I show you there, you'll see that you can't see the screws inside. What I might do, I'm going to show you the difference if I don't add the hole. I'm going to show you what I mean, and that way you'll know for yourself whether you want to do this. I don't know if you're going to see the difference there, but if you look in there, can you see how it's risen up as opposed to this end? That's why I do the hole. So I'm going to remove that, do the hole, and then do the other strap and come back to show you them. And here we have our straps made with our strap ends. Very pretty. And now we need to get our panels, and excuse me, oh goodness me, I'm sorry, yawning. Sammy suggests that we add supports, so I'll agree that it's very advisable to do so. And you can use the fabric you're using, or the vinyl you're using, but I'm going to use some offcuts of cork that I have left over from my previous project. Slightly thicker as well, so even more supportive. And you need to add them where the line of where you added the top band on, and I'm going to glue each side, and these are 1.5 inches across and 2.5 inches down. I'm going to glue both pieces. and I want to lay them centrally like so. And again, I'm going to use some tape to keep that down. And that way I can continue with the project and not have to wait for it to dry. And I'm not going to be doing anything where the glue is, so I don't have to worry about the glue seeping out, etc. We're going to be working here. Okay. So we know we're going to be adding the rivets here and the straps here. So what I like to do is measure for the rivets on the straps first. And I'm going to use my rivet press, so I need to bear in mind that, for example, I can't add a rivet just above here because it would be in the way of this. So I have to allow for it to be able to stamp there. So I'm going to mark the first rivet 3/8 of an inch. In fact, I'm going to do 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch up and in the centre. And the next rivet I'm going to mark 1/2 inch up. And just need to change my punch. Oh, there you go. And now I want to mark where the rivets are, and we need to do it 2 inches below the band line. Oops. So I just lay that there. And I'm just going to mark the rivet placement. And then punch the holes. There we go. And move the rivet press there. And I'm using 9mm across on the head and 9mm posts. So just push them through. And then close them down on the press. And that's one side done. And then we're going to have to do the other side. I'm making sure that we don't twist the handle. So it's going to be like that. So I'm going to do all of them and then return. Okay, I'm adding this in at the start. But basically I forgot to add the foam. So I went ahead with the next stages and then remembered. So I've basically unpicked my bag because it's better to show you the right way. However, because I'm not adding the side connectors, I'm going to still show you where I added them. But it won't have the foam on. I hope that's understandable. Anyway, we need to add the foam. Oh dear. And as you can see, it fits perfectly. And I'm going to stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm going to baste it. Because we need to unpick those stitches after we've sewn the seam. Now we need to stitch the panels together. So you need to make sure that the bag matches where the top band is so that it doesn't look odd on the sides. So that's the place to match up first. And then we take it to the machine. We're going to stitch at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. It's such a big bag, I'm fighting with it to get it past things. Fighting with it. So I've sewn down there, and now we want to take our connector strip and draw a line along the centre. And get our good old double-sided tape. Now, if you're not adding the clasp and ring on the sides, you don't need to do this. So you can zip past this part remove the tape. And then fold into the centre line. There we have it. So it will look like that. And the swivel clasp like that. I may even look for a slightly smaller one. Yeah, that's better. They're a bit big, these ones, as you can see. Huge difference. So I shall save them for another day, and they're a much better size. And what we need to do now is to cut these into 4 equal parts, and this is 19 inches long. So the first one we'll cut is 9.5 inches. And then 4 3/4. So they should be equal, yes. Yeah. And then what we need to do is mark 2 inches in from the edge. And get the clasp, and that goes to the long part. So we need to fold the bottom part up to the 2-inch line and fold the clasp down. So I'm just going to add a little bit of double-sided tape to keep those together. I don't want to add too much of a long piece. So it's all right to add it all the way on the 2-inch end, but I don't want to go too high on this part, because once we fold it down, once it's stitched to the bag, it's not all going to be closed down, so we don't want to see any ugly tape in there. So I'm just going to do this with the rings and the clasps and return. Okay, so I've prepared them all, and I have changed the O-rings. Basically, these looked a bit silly in comparison to the clasps. I thought it would look a bit ridiculous, and they are rather large. So I've changed them for 2 centimetre, 3/4 of an inch D-rings, which look a bit more even, don't they? So that's what I've done. And now we want to add them to the first side. And I'm just going to add some double-sided tape to the seam, just to keep it down while we add this. This bag is so big, it's been difficult. It's a bit difficult to get it all in the shot. Okay, so roller. Okay, so turn it over, and we're going to add the clasp. Now, Sammy says to measure 2 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. Goodness me, I need a bigger desk. So, 2 3/4 inches puts it there. Now, having made the other bags, I just know that I want to have a slightly smaller gap between them. So I'm actually going to put this higher up. And I think 1, 2, 3 and 3/4. Yeah, I'm going to put this 3 3/4 inches instead. So you can put yours where you like, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to add a small amount of double-sided tape. Measure again. 1, 2, 3 and 3/4. And take it to the machine and stitch a rectangle. Okay, so I stitched that in place. And now I'm going to do the top one. And the top one we place 3.5 inches down from the top. And I am going to actually put this where it's meant to be. So 1, 2, 3.5. So basically it sits flush there. And I shall stitch that in place. Okay, so they're stitched on, and this is how they would work to pull the bag down. As it happens, I've decided I'm not going to add them. I've shown you how to add them, but I've decided for this bag I'm not going to. And I know I've stitched them on, but this vinyl is very forgiving and doesn't show any holes. They close over beautifully. So I'm going to unpick these, and I'm not going to add them, just to be different for this time. But I've shown you how to add them anyway. The other side, you stitch it together, and then you just have to stitch it very carefully, like in a tunnel. It's a bit awkward, but it's doable because the bag's so big. I wanted to come back and show you that there's no holes. So that's why I was able to unpick it. I just fancied a change for this bag. And now I'm going to stitch this side closed. Again, making sure that I line up the top band edge along there, because that's the most important part. Okay, take it to the machine and stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so as I've shown you previously, I forgot to add the foam to the panels. So what I'm going to do for ease is to unpick and add it. It's just easier, less messy, less of a... To add it now would be a bit difficult, to be honest with you, because it's just getting it exactly matched on both sides, and to follow the same stitch line and so on. So I'm just going to quickly unpick and start again with the sides. Now we've added the foam, it's time to sew it together again. So you need to match up these sides at the band, because if we don't, it'll stick out like I saw some. I guess at least I've shown that I'm human and that there's ways out if you do make a mistake. There's always, or usually, a way out. And one thing I like to do is show my mistakes, because it kind of makes people realise that they're not alone. So now we stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Attach both sides. Gosh, it's just it's so large. It's a bit of a fiddle to okay, so the foam's basted on one side, and we'll do the same with the other piece. So we've stitched to one side, and I'm going to do exactly the same with the other side and come back. Okay, so I've sewn both sides, and now just to show you with the basting stitches how easy it is just to remove them. And I'm going to keep removing them, and when I've removed them I shall come back to you. Okay, so I have sewn the panels together and removed the foam. Oh, I'm sorry, too high. I've removed the foam like so. And now the next part we need to do is to sew the bottom together. So I shall take it to the machine. As with the sides, we stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I've stitched along the bottom and I've removed the foam, and now we're going to box the corners. So this is such a big bag. But I made the first one at this size, the second one at 80%, but I wanted to make another big one because I really enjoyed it. And I think that's what makes it so special as well, that it's really big. So it's very handy. Okay, so clip them together. Right, I'm not happy about the foam because I don't want the foam causing an issue. So I'm going to cut the foam like so. It also saves having to trim it afterwards. You don't really need to stitch the foam at this point. It's been attached at the bottom and the sides, so you don't need to attach it this way. It's just that the foam was going past the bag, so when I stitched it I wouldn't be able to see where the seam was for the actual bag fabric, so I was in danger of not stitching it together properly. That's better. So I do like showing you my solutions to things so that if you come a cropper, you know how to resolve it. I'm sorry, I keep yawning. As usual, no sleep. Oh dear. Okay, I'm making sure that I match the seams. It's really important that they are matching. Okay. And I'm actually going to stitch this at a little bit more than 1/4 inch seam allowance. I just feel that it just needs it on that part. You don't have to. If you want to stitch at 1/4 inch, by all means do. I'm literally just going to do a tiny bit over, not even 3/8 inch. But okay, so I did the corners and I've turned it right side out. And there she is. Isn't she gorgeous? I was unsure about the pink, but I really like it. Okay, if you're going to put bag feet on or a firm base inside, now's the time to do it. I'm not going to, so I'm leaving it as is. But yeah, now's when you do it. And now we're going to move on to the lining. Now we're on to the lining, and the first thing I'm going to do is the zip pocket. So I've got a piece of my vinyl here, which is 1.5 inches high and 8 inches across, and I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to draw a rectangle box inside it. So I'm going to start 1/2 inch from the edge and 1/2 inch in. And do the same on the other side. And we just need to cut that out. I normally do it freehand, I just follow the line, but I'm not having a good day today. I've not slept for 2 nights. I've got a feeling that's got a lot to do with it. I shouldn't really be doing the tutorial, but I couldn't wait. I know some of the ladies are waiting for this, so I pressed on. And it's kind of nice for you to see that I'm not perfect, I make mistakes too. And it's nice to see how to get out of them. Okay, so I've cut along. I'm just going to, because I didn't go right to the edge with the rotary cutter, because obviously it could go over. Do the other end. This is the way Sammy does her zip pockets. She has the tutorial on her website for free, so you can go there and download it. So I've now got this. So in the centre there, the rectangle that I've cut out is actually 7 inches by 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to put tape along the top and the bottom. So remove the tape, and for this bag Sammy suggests that you go 2 inches down from the top to place the zipper pocket. Right, so I need to find the center point. So it's 19.5 across, so it's 9 3/4 inches is the centre point. And it would help if I mark the centre point on here. Like to make sure it's laying nice and neatly, not askew. And I just want to check it is equal. So that's 5 3/4 space that side, and the same that side. So that's good. Okay, now we go and stitch around the outer edges of the box. Because we're going to be top stitching on the vinyl, I've pulled the threads out. So we're not back stitching. And then again, as before, pull on the threads and cut them. So I've stitched it around, and now we need to cut the fabric from the centre. I just use my rotary cutter to start it off, and then I use my applique scissors, and I go to about 1/4 of an inch away from the stitching. I don't like to get too close. Okay, so that's cut out. We get our zip and my double-sided tape. I don't know why I turned that over. I like to put the double-sided tape on here rather than the zip. I'm just going to remove one part for now so that I don't get stuck in the wrong places, and I put the zipper pull downwards. Right, and then remove the double-sided tape on this side. Oh, goodness me. Like to make sure it's laying evenly. I am very fussy. Yeah, happy that. And now we get the zipper pocket piece, and this is directional, so I've got to make sure that I've got it in the right direction. And this is the top part that we stitch to first. And then we take it to the machine and we just, do you know, I've done the wrong part. How funny is that? I wasn't sure when I was doing it. I was thinking, I'm sure I'm doing something wrong here. Okay. So we do it this way. Okay, sorry about that. I had a call at the door, so I had to just drop what I was doing and go and answer it. So, I've put the tape along the bottom now, in the right place. And then I can get it off, like so. And I just want to make sure, yeah, that's right. I've got the fabric the right way up. Right, and now we take it to the machine and just stitch along the bottom. Because we're top stitching on vinyl again, I've pulled the threads through. And just going to open the zip up. So I've stitched along the bottom, turn it over and just finger press it. And now we put the taper along the top. And then fold the fabric up. And take it to the machine once more. Okay, as before, we've got our threads out. And we're going to stitch at the sides. And then along the top. And then down this side. So I've stitched it all around, and I used my leather needle to put the threads through to the back where I tied them off. Now we just need to stitch the sides of the pocket. So that's the pocket finished, and that's the fabric the right way up. And I'm going to put my handmade label on in a moment, my Bags of Love by Diane label, and then we're going to do the slip pocket on the other side of the lining. Okay, this isn't part of a pattern, I'm just doing a slip pocket for myself. Because this is directional fabric, I've cut it into two so that they're both going to be the right way up. If I did a fold, then it's going to be upside down. And I'm going to stitch all the way around and just leave the a gap of a couple of inches. So I've stitched all the way around, and then we just want to trim the corners. And then we turn it right side out. And I've actually made quite a large slip pocket because it's such a big bag. It wouldn't have looked right to have had a small slip pocket. I mean, what else you could do is, I've got a credit card tutorial on YouTube, so if you look at my channel or subscribe, you'll see the one for how to make a credit card slot, which you can then attach to the lining as well. So you could have a small slip pocket one side and the credit card next to it, or you can actually make a credit card pocket slots, and then the back of it would be a slip pocket. So you can do whatever you feel like. It's nice to add these little extras into our bags. Makes them very unique then. So we're just going to poke the corners out gently so I don't go through. so. And then I'm going to give it a press, and then I'm going to get some vinyl which I'm going to place along the top, because I've got that unsightly seam to look at. So I'd like to cover that with a band of vinyl, and it also gives the slip pocket some structure. So I'm going to press this and then I shall come back. So I've pressed it and I've sealed the bottom with a bit of double-sided tape for now, and I've dropped the band. I've cut a band the length of the slip pocket, which is actually 12 inches by 6 inches. So I cut the fabric originally 13 inches wide and 6.5 inches deep. So anyway, I just want to mark a line that goes along the centre, which is 3/8 of an inch. Just so it gives me an idea of where I've got to fold it. It's no wonder I go through so much double-sided tape. Okay. And I'm just going to lay this like so. Not quite happy, it's just poking out the end there. Wasn't happy with the placement there. That's better. And then some more double-sided tape. Too close to the edge. It's good not to go too close to the edge so that it doesn't poke out from underneath. That's it. Oh goodness me. Sometimes you have to go to a different end. Okay, and then fold over. Like so. Right, I just want to make sure that I'm happy. Yeah, and now I'm going to stitch along. So I've stitched along the top, and I'll just check the back. Yeah, it's all caught in with the stitching, thankfully. Nice and neat. Had it not caught, So had there been stitching below, I would have done another row of stitching along the top to encompass it. It's not going to be visible, so it's not the end of the world. Now I've got a little bit of bag poking out there that side, slitter pockets, whereas this hasn't. Not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. It's not something that's really vital. So now I want this to be a little bit lower than the zip pocket, because you might put things in here that will stand up, like your phone, etc. So I'm going to put it 4 inches below the top, and I want to make sure that I put it in the centre. That's 4 inches that side, 4 inches that side. Yeah, that's more or less perfect. And then just put some pins in to hold it in place. So now I could, if I wanted to, leave it as a huge slip pocket, but what I thought I might do is, I just want to check actually that I've got that straight. It's 4 3/4. Yeah. What I thought I'd do is have a pen pocket in the middle. I wanted to check that was right as well. So what I'm going to do, oh my goodness me, I'm getting all stuck together, is find my blue pen because that will show up better. So this is 12 inches across, so I'm going to do a line, I think I'll do 5 inches, and again 5 inches. I'm going to do a 2-inch wide pocket because we can put two pens in there then, or your perfume stick or your lipstick, whatever you like, but there's room for a couple. So what I'm going to do is stitch around the sides and across and down those two. So I finished the slip pocket, and for example, there's room for a few pens and your phone and your makeup mirror, whatever else you want, notebook, address book, etc. So that's that. I've just got a bit more of the blue disappearing ink line to the heat dissolvable pen, and I stitched the bottom close of course as well. I was being stubborn there. Yeah, okay. So loose thread there. Now it's time to stitch the lining together. So we're going to stitch down the sides and across the bottom, and we're going to box the corners off. I'm going to do all that in one go. We're going to start with 1/4 inch seam allowance at the top, and we'll work our way through to do 1/2 inch seam allowance. This will help the lining fit better. Now to gradually go out. So that you see it's narrow and then it gradually goes out, and I shall do the same on the other side. Making sure that the lining still matches up. And then do a definite, just a 1/2 inch seam allowance straight across. I just need to check on something. Yep, I forgot. We need to leave quite a large opening. So, just completely forgot and was getting carried away. So, I need to just remove some of that stitching, and the quickest way to do it is with my craft knife. Usually, when it's sharp enough. Okay, I think my knife is a bit blunt. I need to change blades. So, I'm just going to go to where I've unpicked that. So that I can do the locking stitches, and then go right across to the other side, and do the same. Apologies, but we lost the sound again. So we just need to box the corners off at 1/2 inch seam allowance. So here's the lining panel sewn together with the gap. That's a very wide gap because that vinyl's quite thick. So we put that aside for a moment and we get our zip, our main zip. And what we need to do is we open up the end that the zip pull is on. And we need to make a mark 2 inches from the end. On both pieces, both sides, like so. And what we need to do, I'm going to zoom in. We need to basically fold it down and then sorry, I'm trying to look at what I'm doing and get it in place, sorry. Fold it down and then fold out. Can you see what I mean? So you fold it down like so and then fold it over like so. And I'm going to add some glue. There. And in there. And then just clip it. And do the same on the other side. You just sort of need to work out where you have to glue. So, fold it over. Oh, I'm out of shot, I do apologise. Although I've shown you now, so I don't really need to be so close, do I? Right, I'm going to zoom out again now. Okay, so if you look, if you've done it evenly, you'll see that they match, that the curves match and so on. And that is really quite important for the look of the bag. So now what we need to do is to get our main bag. And I don't want all this foam. So I should have done this previously and I forgot to. But I'm going to remove the top centimetre so that we don't have the bulk in the sewing that we're going to do. So you need to remove your foam, just the top obviously. I could have done this in the first place, but I just wasn't thinking today. I didn't have my thinking head on at all this morning. I'm meant to be teaching you things, not showing you how not to do things. Okay. Oh, goodness me. Didn't want to come then. I just want to make sure that that's sitting all evenly inside. Yeah, okay. So, now we've done that, what we need to do is mark on the ends. Place a mark on the ends. And it's 3/4 of an inch in from the seam. We do mark both ends. Okay. And now I'll turn that around. I'm about to turn it back. And now we want to put some double-sided tape along the top of the bag, starting where I've marked that line, and I'm going along the very top. And we go all the way along to the other line that we've marked. And then remove the tape. Goodness me, there's a lot of traffic noise out there tonight. I don't know if you can hear it, if it's being picked up. Okay, so looking at the bag, we need to have the zip opening to the right. I'm terrible with left and right. So we need to have the zip opening with them to the right, and we want to have it face down, and then putting it so it's in line with the top and with the mark. And go along, making sure the zip doesn't warp at all, and it stays nice and straight. Like so. And now we open our zip to the fullest. And go as far as you dare. And I like to just put a clip to make sure that I don't accidentally go off. Not that it's the end of the world, we could put it back on, but it'd just be a hassle that I could do without. Right, and we fold the like so. Right, so now you're looking at it. Oh goodness me, this is just so deep that it's hard to show you. Like so. I hope you can see that properly. Okay, more double-sided tape. Oh, I haven't marked. So 3/4 of an inch from each end again. Oops. Okay. And lay the double-sided tape from one end to the other. So, and then remove the backing, and now be very careful to lay the zip equally. So there, and then go along as before. Okay. Right, so now I'm going to try and show you, now that it's stuck on, that you've basically got the zip face down on both sides, and the zip looks like that. So I hope you can see that properly. And then what we want to do is make sure that the zip slants downwards for when we sew. So I'm going to just put some double-sided tape like so. This will come off easily. If you're using something that it won't come off so easily, then don't risk doing that. But I'm doing it because it really just helps to keep it out of the way. And I just use the clip to stop it from going down too far. And I believe I just need to check. Yeah. Right, now we base stitch, that's it. We just base stitch along the top at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, before I stitch this, something's been bothering me. And this has been bothering me. This extra at the back. And I'm thinking, I didn't have that with the last 2 bags. I'm sure I didn't. And that's because I've not really, and that's very naughty of me, I've not been reading the instructions. I've just been sort of following the subjects and doing this from memory, which I really shouldn't do. And that's probably where I've gone so badly wrong today. But when you've attached this band and sewn it, you should have trimmed the back. So I'm sorry again. I almost feel like doing this all over again, but so I'm just going to trim this. It will also reduce the bulk. I am going to try and add this information in where you need to do it, so you may not need to worry at this point. But as you can see, it comes away nice and easily. The only point I have a problem with is the seam at the side, really. It's a bit bulkier than it would have been. So I'm a bit cross with myself. So I shall do my best to make sure that you trim the back. So it comes away quite easily, as you can see. I must admit, this has not been one of my best tutorials, and I can only apologise to you ladies who rely on me to make your bags. And I can assure you I will do my best never to repeat this disaster again. Oh dear. So do the same with the other side. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing or not. So as you can see, it's not difficult to cut away. but I am going to add into the video, so you should have seen my correction on this, hopefully. So there we go. So we've removed all the excess. Now we go and baste. We're going to baste at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just make sure that you've moved it down. So that, let's try and show you, it's like that. And now we need to baste the other side. Yeah. Before we do the next stage, I want to anchor this foam down because we're not going to be stitching it at the top. What I could have done and should have done earlier was stitched it down a bit further. But there you go. So let's see. If we just put some glue on the supports that we did earlier, put quite a bit, and then making sure that the bag is sat at the bottom properly. And just press it down, and that will hold at the moment while I put glue on this side. And doing the same thing, making sure it's down to the bottom. And I'm going to go and leave this to dry. And what I like to do is get one of my big books, dressmaking book, and then put my green machine on there, and that will keep them really flat down. I'm going to go away for an hour and come back when it's dry. Okay, now it's time to put the bag together, and just to save zooming out, sorry, try and save a bit of time, what I've done is, rather than showing you forever, I've put the bag right side out into the lining that's wrong side out, so that the right sides are together. And so you're looking at the inside of the outer as well. And then I've lined up the side seams together, both ends, and then I've gone round and clipped it all. And then we take it to the machine and stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance. This is where the fun begins. We need to bring it to the machine. Mine's a machine's a flatbed. I don't have a part that pulls away so that I can put it underneath and move round. So this is how I have to sew it, sort of on the inside. And when I'm top stitching, I actually swing this round and have the end hanging off, would you believe? But it works. So there you go. So we're going to stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way round. And then we move the bag like this, and I go over, just going to show you, over the top of the machine, like so. Just put the camera back, there you go. So as you saw, I've sewn all the way around the top. The beauty of this having a 1/4 inch seam allowance is we don't have to trim it. So now we birth our bag. I left a huge hole, as you saw, and it makes life very easy for turning, as you will see. I have arthritis in my hands and wrists, and to fight with the opening just isn't on. So out she comes, nice and easy. I just wanted to show you as well, for when I was stitching around the bag, I clipped my handles down, otherwise they were causing a bit of a bulk by wanting to sit up there. So okay, I do love this fabric. Can you see how it hasn't creased or anything? I mean, it's just lovely. So we put our hands in. Now if you wanted to put a heavy base in, now's the time. I'm not putting a heavy base in as such, rather than 2 layers of Pearl-Tex glued together, just to give it a bit of structure. And what I'm going to do is glue very heavily on the bottom, put this in and weight it down for an hour or so. So I'm going to do that. There's no point in showing you because it's too big, you won't see it, but I will come back when it's time to finish the bag. Okay, so I've turned the bag right side out, and the base is glued in there, and then all I did was I put the lining inside and I stitched the hole closed. I didn't think I needed to show you it really. And I have a little tip for top stitching. I don't know about you, but I've had some horrendous results before now. So I've sort of discovered a way, well, I just thought about it, to be honest, and thought it made sense, by pulling the lining down and pinning it inside, like so. I don't do the pins that way because I end up stabbing myself, they get caught in the machine, etc. Putting them down is fine, and because the lining is all flat, it top stitches perfectly. So give it a go. I wanted to show you how I have the top stitch. My machine doesn't have a part that comes away, and it can be really awkward for top stitching. I don't like having it so I'm stitching inside. I like to have the best stitching on the outside. So I have to hang it off my table a little bit. This machine is extremely heavy on the back, so it doesn't, even pushing down, look, it doesn't want to tip. So for this particular machine, and because I'm sat here with it, it's okay to do it. So that's how I hang it over. Okay, so we've got the threads pulled out quite far. I've got my stitches on length 4, and I'm going to top stitch. And now this vinyl is wanting to roll up, and it's not very good to stitch. The results aren't good. So whilst I'm moving it round, I have to pull the vinyl to make sure it's flat. I have to try and sit it on my knee as well, so it's not hanging. Really need extra hands. And now make sure that the zip is out of the bag. Okay, we got round it and live to tell the tale. Pull the threads out. Okay, I've removed all the pins on the inside now. So I've got my bag. Oh, I've missed a pin. So the bag is huge inside. And now we're going to finish it with the zip. And you have it like so, and there it is closed. And then what we need to do now is put the end in our zipper end. So just get a hardware screw and I've got all different lengths here, so I like to get quite a long one to make sure it grabs it in and it doesn't want to come out. It's being very shy. Got you. Okay, and what I like to do is I like to put a little bit of glue at the end, not much because it could sort of ooze out to the top, but it just gives me confidence that it's firmly in there. So what we do is we get the zip, we fold it over at the back, fold it over at the back again, like so, and then push it in. Not happy with how that went in. That's it. Okay, so that's all the way in. And then I get my screw. That doesn't want to stay in. I am doing this at a very awkward angle so that it's in on the camera. And then screw it down. You can of course make one with vinyl that matches your bag if you don't have these, which is just as nice. I screw until it's no longer sitting proud. Bit more. There. And there we have it. Let me zoom out a bit. That's as far as it will go. And there we've got our bag. And what I'm going to do is attach my tassel on the top. I need my other pliers. Excuse all the noise. I'll be back shortly, I can't find them. I'm just going to show you how to make a tassel. It's very straightforward for those of you obviously that haven't made one before. And it depends on the tassel cap you're using, if you're using a tassel cap, as to how much you use. So I always make sure I've got enough. This is a very large tassel cap, so I've done 6 inches across and 6 inches long. And what I do is, I do it by freehand now because I'm used to it. But initially I used to get my ruler, draw 1/2 inch across, and then I would do 1/8 of an inch lines all the way, and then I use my rotary cutter to cut. I don't really like using the scissors. And sometimes, just sometimes, I'm sure I've got one here somewhere. Oh, I'm sure I had one that I went off a little bit. There. Sometimes you might go a little bit off, a little bit wonky. It doesn't matter to have the very odd one that's like that. It's not the end of the world. But generally, I mean, obviously, it is good to have straight lines if you can. And now what I do is I very tightly roll, as tight as possible, and I make sure I'm going straight, that I don't go wonky, and keep it tight as I go. It is really important for it to be tight, and I just keep rolling and checking that I'm not going off. And if I found that this didn't fit in the hole, that it's too chunky, you can just, you know, cut a line off to try. So I've done that, and as you can see, it fits. And when I let go, it will loosen up a bit. This is probably a little bit smaller than for the tassel cap, surprisingly. So I probably could have done 7 inches, but it will be fine because I've rolled it so tight. I like to just put some glue in for it to be held in and stay put. And I like to put the line where next to the hole. And there we have it. And then to help with the screw going in, I use my bradawl to sort of puncture a hole, and then I get my screw wherever I've put it. Oh, I'm a nightmare sometimes with losing things. Oh, there it is. Oh my goodness me. And then I get my screwdriver. And screw it in. And because I've sort of made a hole with the bradawl, it really helps with this going in. And rather than squashing it down, it goes into the material. And there we have it. Actually, I'm not happy with how that's screwed in, because if you look there, that's how it's looking. So obviously the hole I made wasn't good enough, or I've gone next to the hole rather than into the hole. So I like to pull this back out. And the reason I'm showing you this is so that you know what to do as well if you've never used these. And that's why I like to use the bradawl, because that's what it does. It pushes the fabric rather than allows you to go in to the fabric. So okay. Let's try now. That's better. So as you can see, there's still a little bit, but that's inevitable. But then I just coax it to sort of push up into the screw. And there we have it. That's it. And that's your tassel made. This doesn't have a lobster clasp on the end, so what I do is I open the link up a little bit, and you can either add it to a lobster claw. I thought I had a diddy one, but I don't. You get these little tiny ones, and or just link it onto a ring, you know, a little D-ring, a small one, such as put it onto one of these and put this onto your bag, etc. So I add mine with different methods. So that's the tassel. Back again. My husband had moved them. So we get our pliers and open it up. I'm attaching it to my zip because I don't have any other hardware on here. I mean, I can put a D-ring around or a round ring around the bag handle, but I'd rather put it on the zip, which I did with my other bag, and it looked good. Gosh, it's very fiddly. It's hard when you're on camera and you're trying to do it within camera shot. That's it. And there we have we can use that. We could even remove the pull, but I'm going to leave the pull on. So there we go. Can't wait to see your bags. Happy stitching.